Okay, so it's July 31st. The big news today is a drone strike that hit in Crimea in Sevastopol. Sevastopol is down here at the very tip of Russian-controlled, Russian-annexed Ukraine. So Ukraine still sees it as part of Ukraine. Russia sees it as part of its own country since they annexed it in 2014. And a drone hit a naval headquarters facility, canceling Navy Day. And I'm going to talk about that through a series of articles. Here is the latest in Ukraine, according to the Guardian, and they do a great job of collating things. And so I'll use this as my jumping off place. Russia's moving large number of troops to the south, and they've been doing that. Everybody's getting ready, getting positioned for the next big offensive. They're increasing their troop numbers, preparing for a counteroffensive in Ukraine's south, and preparing to launch an offensive of their own. Hundreds of thousands of civilians have been told to evacuate from the Donetsk region. There's 50,000 children still there. So getting those people out is a good thing for a number of reasons. First, the assistant prime minister, I think it was, said that they're running out of gas supplies in that area. They've been destroyed. Winter's coming, so getting them out before that is important. If you evacuate civilians, the army doesn't have to worry about them. They can just fight. They can be more efficient. And as troops move from this to the south, that area is going to heat up with Ukraine attacks. My guess is, I can't tell you for sure, but I think that's going to become there's going to be a two-front battlefield if I am correct. Ukraine drone strike on the Black Sea Fleet headquarters that is in Sevastopol, prompting officials to cancel their planned Navy Day. It's a big to-do in Russia, and it got canceled because of a drone strike. Now, it's unclear who caused it, and I'll get into that and talk about this in just a moment. Russian strikes the southern Ukrainian port city of Mykolaiv. Russian shelling on Mykolaiv reportedly killed one of their wealthiest men, and 200 Russian Marines from the 810th Naval Infantry Brigade refused to return to the fight in the southern regions of Ukraine. This is according to Ukraine's Defense Ministry Intelligence Directorate. So until I find confirming something somewhere else, I'm not going to just say, hey, this is what's happening. Let's try to triangulate. Let's look at the map. This is Mykolaiv, where the missile attack was, and we'll talk about that in a moment. If I pan out, you'll notice something about Mykolaiv. Mykolaiv is one of the first big cities that's still being held by Ukraine. Ukraine goes all the way down to here. This thing that looks like Vietnam, this is all Russian-controlled territory. This is Sevastopol. This is where the drone attack was. Okay. The Institute for the Study of War talked about the same kinds of concepts today. Russian forces have resumed local ground attacks in the northwest and southwest of Izium, that is in Donetsk. They're working on offensive operations for Kharkiv and toward Kharkiv city. Now, scroll down. Kremlin has not responded to the International Red Cross request to access Olivinka prison. That is the POW attack just 2 days ago. And surprise, they're stalling. I wonder what's happening in the meantime. Russian forces conducted limited ground attacks northwest of Izium. Russian forces continue to attack northwest of Slavyansk. Russian forces made marginal gains in Avdiivka. Okay, so there's limited movement, but it's nothing really significant, not major ground taking place. Now, here's the big story today. Russian Navy Day celebrations are canceled in Crimea's Sevastopol. This is now, I'm going to go from Radio Free Europe to The Guardian to RT to Pravda, because what I try to do is triangulate to see as much as I can about what's going on. Okay, so Russian Navy Day celebrations in the Crimean port city of Sevastopol have been canceled. True, we know that. The governor, and this is the governor, looks like a friendly guy, Russian installed governor said the Russian holiday has been canceled for security reasons. Okay, they wrote on his Telegram post that he suspected a drone was launched by Ukraine, and with the Black Sea Fleet reported that the attack was carried out by a makeshift drone fitted with a low-powered explosive device. The spokesman for Ukraine's Odessa military region denied Kyiv was behind the incident, dismissing the suggestion as a sheer provocation. Stop. Okay. So who else could it be? It's either the Ukrainians or Russians. It doesn't seem like the Russians, but sure, they could bomb their own city, but they have real bombs. So let's just look at who it could be. If it's Ukraine and they're denying it, it's just Ukrainian military and they're liars. Or it's Ukraine like somebody operating on their own and it was not a provocation by the Russians, it's just a guy trying to disrupt it because go Ukraine, right? Or it's the Russians, but the Russians have real missiles. So why wouldn't they just fire real missiles and claim that it was a Ukrainian attack like what appears to be with the POWs that were killed just 2 days ago? It appears that it was the Russians that had the technology to either blow it up or hit it with some kind of missile, or it was some Russian lunatic. It's probably not the last. So my guess is that it is probably a kind of lone wolf Ukrainian attacking that on his own with a drone that's easy to come by. So this is just my amateur opinion, and it's just my guess as I look at each of these articles. Okay, Sevastopol, Crimea's largest city, is a major port in the peninsula in the south. And that's the end of this article. Let's go on to The Guardian, read a little bit more about it. Russia has claimed its Black Sea Fleet headquarters was hit by Ukraine drone strike. Early this morning, Ukraine decided to spoil our Navy Day, posted the governor. It sounds so childish. Five people were injured. These are employees of the fleet headquarters. There were no fatalities, so it wasn't a big strike. It was just, what's going to happen next. But it is pretty amazing that this little thing canceled their Navy Day, and it hit on what Russia considers Russian territory. So that's pretty big. All celebratory events have been canceled due to safety concerns. I ask you to stay calm and at home if possible. Spokesman for Ukraine's Southern Command said that did not confirm that Ukraine was involved in the strike and said Ukraine was conducting operations to liberate Russian-occupied areas targeting Russian military facilities inside Ukraine, not Russia, and that it considered Crimea part of Ukraine. Russia believes that Crimea is Russia. Ukraine believes that Crimea is Ukraine. So, and they're not going to see eye to eye on that. Okay, let's look at RT. RT, Russian television. This is what the Russians read. Black Sea Fleet headquarters in Crimea attacked by Ukraine. Russia's Black Sea Fleet and headquarters has been attacked by Ukraine as Russia celebrates Navy Day. The governor said that all local celebrations have been canceled for safety reasons. When asked about the use of U.S. supplied HIMARS, this was not a HIMAR attack by any means. Vladimir Sabisky, a spokesperson for Ukraine's military intelligence, told reporters that, of course, it's among the targets that must be struck in order to ensure the safety of Ukraine. Yeah, so they're admitting that when we get a chance, we're going to use HIMARS on Sevastopol. Okay, Pravda, pravda.ru. Pravda means truth, and it just puts out a bunch of nonsense, but this is what, again, Russians are reading. The attack was carried out from the territory of the Crimean Peninsula. Now that added a new little level of interest or understanding. It was actually coming from the Crimean Peninsula, so it's probably somewhere very regional. Okay. This can be regarded as an act of sabotage, which was committed from the Crimea. It is easy to make such drones these days. Even terrorists can make them. The drone was controlled from a place not so far from Sevastopol, Sergei Tekskov said. Then, a little bit further, the attack was conducted to disrupt festive events, but the goals were not achieved. They are trying to breathe some additional strength into the armed forces of Ukraine to raise their morale. It's not going to last long. They will not intimidate Crimeans, nor will they be able to stop the military operation, the senator said. Okay, if the goal was conducted to disrupt festive events and the goals were not achieved, how are they not achieved? You canceled Navy Day. So I think the goal was satisfactory. They will get a very serious response to the provocation, and they did, and you'll see this in a moment. Early this morning, the Euro-Nazis, or Euro-Nazis, I guess that's Ukrainian Nazis, it's like Brad and Angelina, Brangelina, decided to ruin Navy Day for us. It kind of sounds like a whiner. For security reasons, all festive events dedicated to the Navy Day were canceled. So the drone had its impact. I mean, it was It's a pretty simple thing, but it had its impact. And my guess is that it's going to, seeing the success of this, you'll see more and more of it. Again, I'm not there. I don't know. I'm just predicting, but I think you'll see more and more of that kind of thing. Okay, now in response, and I'm not sure if this was a response or if it was already pre-planned, but Putin argued that he was going to have a heavy response for this. Putin threatens the lightning speed response, and the same day, grain tycoon Oleksiy Vygotsky and his wife Raza died in an attack on Mykolaiv. Now, again, going back to the map, if we look, Mykolaiv's in this little pocket protected by this little city here. So this tycoon was killed here. Um, so he's a grain tycoon, and his wife died in the attack. The businessman's death was a great loss for Mykolaiv and all of Ukraine, Zelensky said. 50 years of his career, valuable contribution to the development of the region and the agricultural subsidies. In a speech commemorating Russia's Navy Day in St. Petersburg, Putin wasn't down in Mykolaiv, he was in St. Petersburg. He said, "We will provide protection firmly and by all means. The key here is the capabilities of the Navy, which is able to respond with lightning speed to anyone who decides to encroach on our sovereignty and our freedom." Okay? Putin giving his speech, and this is the guy that was killed, unfortunately, in that strike on Mykolaiv. All right, a little bit more. Now, it sounds like it's not connected, but it actually is. Ukraine's harvest, because this guy was a big guy in agriculture, Ukraine's harvest could be halved this year due to Russia's invasion, warns Zelensky. Well, does it matter? What does that mean? Okay, so Ukraine's harvest this year under the threat of being twice less, that means half. Ukraine's president posted on Twitter. So before the invasion, Ukraine was known as the breadbasket of Europe. Okay, and I've heard that for years. So, a supplier of countries in North Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. Now, in 2021, before the war, Ukraine produced 80 million metric tons of grain. That was enough to feed 400 million people for 6 months, according to Zelensky. Now, if you have that, 200 million people for 6 months, or 100 million people for a year, now no longer have access to the same amount of food, and they're either going to pay higher prices for that, this is just basic economics, have to pay higher prices, or they're going to starve, or have to go to some kind of alternative that is less good than buying this food. So that's what's really at stake with Ukraine. Now, if Russia is also embargoed, that's another million or 2 million people, because Russia produces even more than Ukraine does. Ukraine's the breadbasket of Europe. Russia would be a largely Asian producer, although it spans slightly into Europe. Okay, so that's the background there. Now, this is a continuing story from the last week. Algeria is hinting at joining the BRICS. Um, Sergei Lavrov was on a goodwill tour in Africa. He was trying to cozy up to the African nations in order to create new alliances, because as the Russians are no longer allowed to play in the European sandbox, they are now having to go and find new trading partners. And the BRICS are their primary trading partners. The BRICS are Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. So that's the BRICS. So Algeria might be wanting to join the BRICS. 13 other nations were invited to the BRICS conference this year, and the BRICS already account for more than 40%. Now, again, this is RT talking. So what did they highlight? The BRICS already account for more than 40% of the world's population. The bloc stated its goals are to promote peace, security, development, global cooperation, and the development of humanity. Isn't that nice? Iran and Argentina formally applied to join the group in June. So Iran and Argentina might be there, and Algeria is thinking about maybe joining the BRICS. So let's talk about the BRICS. They're 40% of the world's population. That's something to be reckoned with, 40%, right? Well, so the 40% of the world's population, they only produce 25% of world's GDP, gross domestic product. So they're kind of lagging behind. Now, what Russia wants to do is create, instead of a G7 controlled kind of world where the United States and European powers are kind of dominating that. And the G7 used to be the G8. Russia got kicked out in 2014 after they invaded Ukraine. But instead of that, they want to have a bipolar world, which is, the G7 on one side and the BRICS counterbalancing it. But The G7, while it's producing, how much was it? Uh, the BRICS are producing 25% of nominal GDP. That is 25% of the world's goods, although they're 40% of the population. The G7 are 11% of the world's population, so 1 in 10 roughly, but they produce somewhere close to 40% of the world's gross domestic product. So they're overproducing by a long shot of the world's domestic stuff. So while they're saying what they're reporting in here is not factually inaccurate, BRIC nations already account for more than 40% of the world's population, but it's not really telling the whole story. And that usually happens when you're dealing with RT and Pravda. And this is why I triangulate, right? So here I showed you articles from The Guardian. I showed you articles from the Institute for the Study of War, the Radio Free Europe, RT, Pravda, CNN. So you're getting a sense of what's actually going on in as we triangulate about the story of the day. Hey, thank you for your time. If you've listened so far, please subscribe and come back tomorrow. I do these daily.